Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Pulp Literature's Friday Live reading series. I'm your host, Jen Landels, and today we have authors Theric Jepson, Hannah Van Didden, and Michael Kamakana. So good morning and good middle of the night. Hannah's coming to us from Australia, so we appreciate her sacrifice in staying up this late for us. Welcome, everybody. How are you guys doing?
Well, thank you.
Good.
COVID haircut the other day.
Oh, you got your COVID haircut. That's wonderful. So, as usual, we'll have 3 readings this morning. If you're following along on YouTube, please put your questions up in the chat, and I've got Mel backstage, and she's going to be passing those questions on to us, and we'll have our authors answer for you. First up, we have Theric Jepson. So we published his story, The Naked Woman, back in Pulp Literature Issue 6. Since then, he's left ghosts behind to write short fiction about dragons, steampunk religion, is that steampunk religion? Eldritch horrors.
No comment.
Okay. Eldritch horrors of the American South and an angry 3-year-old. All the great mysteries of the age. His novel, Just Julie's Fine, is out from BCC Press in the next year or so. So welcome, Theric. I'll hand the mic over to you.
Thank you very much. I was thinking about how introduce The Naked Woman, and I realized that when I first got really serious about writings, my mind went back to my childhood. I lived in Montpelier, Idaho, a very small town in the southeastern corner of Idaho, until I was 10 years old. And a lot of my early work tried to figure out what to do with Idaho, which I still love. I love going back to Montpelier, but I haven't lived there in a very, very long time. And what I realized is when I wrote The Naked Woman, I stopped writing about Montpelier. Whatever it was that haunted me about Montpelier was solved by writing this story. I'm very pleased to share it with you.
Well, thank you. Yes.
Hi. The Naked Woman. Usually, only toothy, nether-dwelling monsters or horned, vase-breaking imps hide out of sight of the adult mind. But she didn't seem like a monster or an imp at all. When the boys of Miss Garner's 3rd grade class saw her pass the schoolyard during afternoon recess, wearing nothing but a Polly Pocket backpack over one shoulder, they hid behind the evergreen bushes and watched, fearful the monitor would see them watching and call their parents. It didn't occur to them that a woman without clothes next to an elementary school might be the one to get in trouble, or at least in more trouble than the naturally curious 3rd grade boys watching her. She was a grown-up, and grown-ups didn't get into trouble. Boys got in trouble. She walked by the next day during lunch, backpack free, but carrying a Sesame Street umbrella crooked over her right elbow. She attracted a crowd. Already her light orange blonde hair and smooth milky curves were the stuff of playground legend. All but a few children lay on the ground near the fence to watch her walk by. Every movement was a lesson, every bounce a revelation, every jiggle an education. The monitor saw the children tittering by the fence and walked over to see what they were up to. She barked at them, demanding intelligence. One boy, a dark-haired freckle-filled named Ralph, pointed. The monitor turned to look, but failed to see the naked woman, 6 inches taller and 100 years younger than herself, walking by. That's when they knew. The big item of conversation that afternoon, however, was not why grown-ups couldn't see the naked woman. That may have been strange, but it certainly was not outside the realm of possibility. But how she managed to stuff. She didn't show up again until Friday. School was already over, and most of the kids had already left when Ralph, his sister, and a few of their friends saw her walking down the same sidewalk wearing a baseball cap. There she is. They ran to the sidewalk and followed her, keeping about a half block behind. They crossed Clay Street on the light. She had walked through traffic without looking, and followed her down to Boise, where she crossed again without looking. Maybe she's a ghost, said Sabrina, a freckle-filled herself with dark brown ear-length hair that made her look more like Ralph than his sister did. No one answered. They had all thought this. They weren't happy with Sabby for saying it out loud. The naked lady kept walking up 6th to the dead end, then headed up the bike trail. The kids stopped to consult. Do you think this is where she always goes? Do you think she lives here? I wish we had her bikes. Do you think she knows we followed her? Doesn't she pay attention to anything? I wish I knew who she was. Why doesn't she wear clothes? Do you think she will in winter? Do you think she's dead? They all stopped and looked at Sadie. Finally, Ralph said, come on, and they headed up the bike trail. If the sidewalks were bad on feet, the trails would be worse. Except for the most used paths, it was tough not to pop bike tires on goat heads or rusty nails, and impossible not to get burrs in socks. If the kids hadn't been so far behind, they would have stopped to de-weed themselves, but she was getting away. She left the path, and Ralph held down one barbed wire with his foot and pulled the other one up for the girls to get through. But Sabrina hesitated. She didn't go through the fence. Knock it off, said Ralph. She's right there. So Sabby went through, then held the wires for Ralph, and before the other kids knew it, they had caught up with their prey. She was sitting on an old kitchen chair and reading a newspaper. A bug wagon and a paint can lay knocked over beside her. She closed and reopened the paper to turn a page and did not see them. She can't see us, they whispered. Sabby gnawed her sleeve. They soon discovered that any day she walked by, and most days she didn't, the naked lady could be found in the fields on the other side of the fence from the bike trails, sitting on her chair. She did different things, filed her nails, did crosswords, ate chocolates, but she was always there, and she never saw them watching her. The end of excerpt.
Thank you, Theric. That was great. I love revisiting that story. That was one of the most fun ones we had to edit in the early years, and it's got it really does capture that feeling of childhood. The group of kids out on their own, out in the back of the schoolyard, things like that. So really nice job with the voice.
Thank you.
Mel's telling me, he said, amazing story, innocence, irony, humor, eeriness. And there's Om Kumar says, hi,
I see
Mr.
one of my
Jepsen.
students here.
Yes.
Hi, Om. Thanks for coming. I alerted my students that I was doing this, and I was grateful that you suggested ending the story right before the story admits existence here. So that was that'll keep me a little more respectable.
That's good. So what grades do you teach?
This semester I have 9th graders and I have 12th graders. Speaking to Canadians and Australians, I believe that those terms cross over, but if not, please ask for clarification.
They pretty much do.
Yeah.
And so how do you find that your writing experience helps you as a teacher?
That's a great question. And one thing that sometimes I've thought is that because I'm so close to English in every aspect of my life, both professionally as a teacher and but also as a writer, that so much of my mind is filled with writing, and there are advantages to that. It gives me a lot of experience, and I'm able to answer questions and find solutions to problems for students in ways that maybe I couldn't otherwise. But it does also mean that because my job is English, that sometimes that part of my brain is sucked dry, and maybe I'm not as productive as I could be in the writing if I weren't a teacher. Who knows?
Yeah, and I'm sure Mel can relate to that, since she's a teacher as well. You kind of need to partition your brain a bit and save some reserves for the craft.
Yeah, that's a trick to figure out.
All right. Well, stay on. We will bring you back at the end in case there are more questions. And I'm going to bring Hannah Van Didden onto the stage now. Welcome, Hannah.
Hi.
So, as I said, Hannah is down in Perth, Australia, and she has actually been shortlisted for our short fiction contests many times. And we are actually publishing a story of hers coming up in issue 27, The Lion. But she's not going to read that today, so we'll save that for issue 27. She's been published in places like the Tahoma Literary Review, Crannóg, Southerly Literary Journal, Breach, Atticus Review, and Southword Journal. And The story she's going to read was shortlisted for the 2020 Bumblebee Contest, The Slippery Man. So, Hannah, over to you.
Thanks very much, Jen. The Slippery Man. Her air conditioner purred at her. After her husband had her car serviced, there was a sound that hadn't been there before. Sometimes it took some time to kick in, other times it was there before her bottom hit the seat. When she spoke about it with her husband, he assured her it was nothing. Their mechanic had put the new apprentice onto it, and she'd done a bang-up job. The new apprentice was a girl who was quite a looker, apparently. "I don't feel quite right about the way you're describing her," she said. "I'm just stating facts," her husband laughed. "But if you had seen the way the owner stared at her, that wasn't right." He had spoken to the new apprentice and found that this was not the first time she'd been subjected to unwanted attention. Lately, there had been a slippery man hanging around, and the new apprentice seemed anxious when she mentioned him. He said he'd go back to make sure she was all right, teach her resilience, give her pointers on protecting herself against lectures, and no, he would not take the problem car. When she drove the kids to school, they agreed that yes, the air conditioner definitely sounded different. Could that be a cat under the bonnet? Her husband, who had given the new apprentice 3 sessions in resilience building over the previous weekend, piped up to say, "Don't be silly, that's a normal noise," and he had them nodding that it was indeed a silly thought, and would a cat really have survived an ordeal like that over so many days? This was in spite of the fact they'd witnessed the noise for themselves. Still, she heard it wasn't right. She knew it wasn't. But her husband told her he would not take her car in for an unimagined noise, that he would book her car to be reserviced only when it was due. "They're lovely people, those people who service our cars, and I don't want to put them out," her husband said. "I'm helping them again today to make sure the new apprentice is bedding in okay." While he was out, YouTube taught her how to self-service her car's air conditioning unit. But no sooner had she pulled off the vents than a lanky-limbed man popped out his face and felt his way from there. He was a slippery man, and the second his head and limbs were exposed, the rest of him slid free. He reached out to her and smiled a slippery smile, then loped away. She was too shocked for reaction at the time. However, she did catch the back of him in a photo at the end of the driveway before he disappeared. She showed her husband the photo of the slippery man on her phone, laughing with the release of nervous energy at the strangeness of this thing she could hardly believe had happened. And he told her she must have asked for it. He left her and the kids to take up with the new apprentice, and some months after that, left the new apprentice for the woman who taught the Tuesday evening salsa class at the local gym, which meant he would bump into his estranged wife every so often while she was heading into Reformer Pilates. But her car's air conditioner gave her no further trouble, and she couldn't be happier, all things considered.
Thank you, Hannah. That was wonderful. We don't have full cover for issue 27 up yet, but on the one side you have the painting, which will be the cover painting by Mel Anastasiou, and then on the other side we have an illustration for your story, The Lion, also by Mel.
Gorgeous. I feel honored. Thank you.
It's a great lion.
It is.
And I was wondering if you would just give us the first paragraph or so of The Lion.
I would be pleased to. Thank you. The Lion. A lion walked into a management consultancy. He said to the guy at the front desk, "I want to see the man in charge." The man in charge turned out to be a woman. "What is it you want?" said the woman in charge. "A little of your time," said the lion, shaking out his mane. The woman had a thick middle and shapely loins, like his last gazelle.
That is an excellent teaser for that story.
Thank you.
I can't wait. That should be coming out this summer. So, it will be coming out this summer, all things being as they should be. It's in production right now. So we're excited to have it. And we're excited to finally be publishing you. I wanted to ask you, your writing is so varied. Like your short stories, it's it's almost hard to say they're all by the same author, because some of them are very lighthearted and some of them are very sweet and gentle, and some of them are quite dark and some quite cynical. So, what inspires you to write? Like, how do you pick your short stories?
I don't tend to pick them; they pick me. And I've had some other people comment maybe I haven't chosen a genre yet, but I like to think that some of the greatest writers haven't chosen a genre yet either. So I hope that one day I can be in good company with them. So it's really just finding curiosity and joy in the everyday. Something will jump out at me and I'll see it juxtaposed with something else, and I might make connections that perhaps someone else doesn't with those two things.
Well, the fact you haven't chosen a genre makes you an excellent fit for our magazine, because obviously we haven't chosen a genre either. We love them all, and we love it when writers write outside their usual genre. And tell me a little bit about your writing routine. Do you write at night, in the morning, or you're awake now? So I'm guessing you're a bit of a night owl.
Yeah, my writing routine is quite disjointed and varied. It tends to be late at night or on weekends. I've got 3 small children and a day job, so I just fit in what I can around life. But I've learned that life feeds my writing, so I can't feel too stretched. I just have to be and enjoy whatever that moment brings.
That's a great philosophy for writing and a great philosophy for life.
Yeah, thank you. I like it. It works for me.
All right. Well, stick around for questions at the end, and I'm going to bring our final reader onto the stage. We have Michael Kamakana. So Michael is a Calgary-based novelist with a talent for storytelling that holds readers rapt. He's a prolific writer who works almost nonstop to get his work out of his head and into print. His acclaimed novel Advent was published by us in 2019, and we had an excerpt of it appear in issue 19. So you can see one on each side there. And incidentally, the 2 covers that we've put up, issue 6 and issue 19, were by the same author, Thijs Teng, who's from the Netherlands. And our current issue, the spring issue, is also a Thijs Teng illustration. So a little bit of coincidence there. So welcome, Michael.
Hello. The name is Kamakana, short A all the way through. It's a Hawaiian name because I am half Hawaiian. The section that I have to read is the second reset chapter. When the aliens came, it was not who we expected, but we did not know who to expect. We could not imagine or truly expect the unexpected, the unimaginable. Through our culture and our technology, our intelligence and capabilities, we had for some eras of human history, no longer than our blink, had for centuries, had for many lifetimes dominated our world to such an extent that we felt no qualifiers needed to identify ourselves. We were truly only part of the world, but thought ourselves the entire world. We would claim to be the voices of all humans, the voices incorporating all sense, speaking for all our many humans, though there are many other humans who would dispute such primacy. We lost the right to claim such, as became clear when the aliens came, maintained that we were humans, all too human, but this did not excuse our inhumane history. We were accused by some as the people who had drained the resources of the world, who had ruled by market and austerity, who had ruled by sanction and war, who had lived beyond our own means and so used the means of all other humans. We would later defensively claim it was only a small number of our people who so dominated us as well as his unfortunate others. But these others would reply, if so, why did we not stop them? How could we proclaim innocence? If so, when they acted, how did they mean it if not in our name? We had created our own obscuring fogs of thought. We had eagerly looked away. We had distracted ourselves from the truth of the exploitation of the world. We knew on some level the imbalance of the world. We knew on some level we were reaching many points of ecological disaster. But we did not listen. We were materially wealthy through the ever-expanding desires and abilities of a human world, and we were spiritually impoverished without limit. But this is all over now. We did not believe that. We refused to believe that to the aliens all humans were humans, primitive in thought, in society, in technology. And from this perspective, our wealth, our power, had as little meaning as the color of our skin or the size of our nose or the shape of our eyes. We had progressed from judging such arbitrary physical qualities. We had known that a black man in Africa is different from a black man in America. But we had judged this difference, but associated without much thought such appearances with an entire culture we could not absorb nor make familiar. And so we remained essentially racist as ever. We thought the aliens would note our varied appearances and come quickly to the same prejudices. We thought we were the humans the aliens would deal with because we had familiarity with what we thought was advanced technology. Though compared to their technology not readily distinguishable from magic, our illuminating candle in the dark of ignorance, flickering and overpowered by arc lamps of brilliance from the aliens that allowed no shadows. We may have even thought that we humans could come to understand and wield this magic. We thought we'd learn and in our human way contribute. We were told by our own human experts that indeed their technology and science were understandable and not, if not replicable by humans at our current level of expertise. We were encouraged, we were hopeful, we thought we had a role. We thought our complex societies had useful organization that they would use to introduce this new world to all those people who are not online, people who had no personal technology, people who were out of the loop and never had any true representation or voice in our human world. We were wrong. We decided that those other humans could remain ignorant and helpless, but we would know. We would gather information that is power. We would know and we would act. We had seen the movies. We tried perhaps to operate as once the human world had ever been, some time ago, some time before, in some places hundreds of years past, in some places just last week. We found our most secure databases penetrated and infested by worms that had no antidote and no apparent direction or purpose. We thought we could just turn off our electronic reality. Well, if ever had been a viable strategy, in a few days it was impossible. We watched our vast, inexistent fields of data, not eliminated but flooded, copied and amplified until there was simply too much information. We had access to too much information and too little wisdom. We hoped this was just the bugs in our system adjusting the alien system, and in a few days our familiar world would return. We were wrong.
Thank you for reading that, Michael. I love those reset chapters, all told in second person plural, speaking for the entire human race, and they almost always end up in we were wrong. It's so intense and thought provoking, and yet gentle. So it's like a kind of circular motion throughout the whole book of coming back to these reset chapters. And for those of you out there who haven't read the book, the other chapters follow a more traditional narrative, but it's these reset ones that keep bringing us back to the gist of what humanity is during this alien invasion. So tell us a little bit about how you wrote this, and how do you decided on this structure, and why you wrote it this way.
Well, actually, the reset chapters came first because it was the philosophical implications of human contact with aliens that interested me the most. I had read a book by Munif, Arabian author, called Endings, in which he used we all the time. And it was a reflection of the society involved, that there were no individual characters. It was all we did this, we did that. And I thought this was a very useful way to incorporate the way humans would interact with the aliens. Because indeed, humans would be all humans to the aliens, they wouldn't be individuals. I had read also a book called Red Gold, which was about contact between the Europeans, specifically the Dutch and the Portuguese, with the indigenous in Brazil back in the 1500s, 1600s, and what happened with the happy trading degenerating into slavery and the lands being stolen and genocide and the usual effect of the Europeans on the indigenous cultures throughout the world. And I decided that I wanted to do something similar to this, where we humans were the indigenous and the aliens were like the Europeans.
Yes, yeah, and you do that so cleverly in this. You kind of you bring that sensation. You talk about colonialism in this book without being explicit, and without making explicit reference to our own history, but we all know while we're reading it that's what this is about. And I just have some comments here. Thought-provoking extract. I'm inspired to read on. Love the clever structure. I'm just going to bring in our other authors to ask you all the question that I ask everybody at the end, which is, what are you working on? And let's go from left to right. We'll start with Theric. What are you working on now?
Well, among other things, I am trying to do something I've never successfully done before, which is a screenplay, which I'm writing with a friend of mine who is a writer-director. We'll see how that goes. But if nothing else, I like the exercise of working in a completely new type of writing, and it forces me to think in new ways. And regardless of whether a movie gets made, which is unlikely because movies never get made, I like that I'm learning new things about my craft just by being forced to open myself up to a completely different way of putting words on a page.
That's wonderful. I think screenwriting is great exercise for writers. It forces you to learn how to show, not tell, which you already do beautifully anyway.
Thank you.
But I think for all the new writers out there, that's actually a good thing to try your hand at. If you're kind of getting stuck, try writing a screenplay and switch it up a bit. Hannah, what are you working on?
I'm working on a trilogy at the moment, which is a dystopian, not set too far into the future, but I'm also working on shorter pieces. I'm even when I work on larger works, I'm still working on shorter things. I find that it just keeps my brain fresh. So I tend to produce a lot of flash when I'm writing something really long. So there's a lot coming out of me at the moment.
Oh, that's great. Well, I hope we'll see some more of that flash, and I hope we'll see some longer work from you in the future too.
Yeah, thank you. Me too.
And Michael, what are you working on?
Well, I have actually, aside from Advent, I have 7 book-length works which I am trying to get published, and So I'm trying to concentrate on that and not on writing more things that then I'll have to try and get published. But I guess the other thing that I'm working on is kind of a story or a construction about practical indefinite immortality and the effect on human society of this promised immortality and versus the the effect of some cultures valorizing death and valorizing life, and it's, if I could explain it shortly I would, but I can't, so it's going to be like 50,000, 60,000 words.
Right. Wow, that sounds quite interesting, and I'm sure it's going to be a great read. And we are out of time. We are over time. I can't believe how fast these mornings go. And thank you all for coming and reading for us and helping us get through this pandemic. Stay safe out
Thanks for
there.
inviting us, Jen.
Okay. Yeah, and to all our viewers out there, join us again next week, same time, same channel, and we'll have more readings for you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.